Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'm going to be reviewing two graphic novels that I really liked. The first is Ginseng Roots by Craig Thompson, and the second is Muybridge by Guy Delisle. I'm going to talk about Ginseng Roots first. I waited a really long time to read this book. I waited a really long time for the opportunity to read this book. This is issue number one. It ran for 12 issues. It was recently collected in a trade format. It is dated. This first issue is dated July 2019. I didn't buy it in 2019. It was definitely I picked it up during COVID, but still, it was maybe 2020, 2021 where I first grabbed this issue, and I really liked it. I thought it was a great first issue. Checked online. I saw it was going to be a 12-issue series. And this issue was $5. The next ones were $6. So I was like, 12 issues, $6. If I start buying these off the shelf, I'm going to end up spending like $75 on this comic. Let me just wait for the trade to come out, and that'll be like maybe like $30, $35. And so that's what I did. I waited very patiently for years, 6 years after it's dated, at least 4 years after I first picked it up, to finally read this book. And I didn't even buy it. I got it from the library. But I think I will buy a copy because it was great and it was beautiful. So let's talk about what Ginseng Roots is about. This is the latest from Craig Thompson. I haven't read anything else from him. I've heard great things about Blankets, which I plan to pick up now. This is part memoir, part travelogue, part agricultural textbook, part treatise on American labor and the decline thereof. It's a little bit of everything. Thompson grew up in Wisconsin on a ginseng farm. Apparently, American ginseng is a really big thing. Wisconsin ginseng specifically. This little town of Marathon, Wisconsin, they're growing ginseng there that people from Asia come over here once a year to buy in bulk and then bring it back there. Like, that's how good the Wisconsin ginseng is. And Thompson, at the start, he's on vacation and he has an injury. His hand starts to really hurt him, and it turns out it's like he's got something like debilitating in it. His drawing hand, and it's kind of deforming a little bit, and he's at a bit of a loss. A little directionless. He decides to go back home to his roots, ginseng roots, and just kind of reconnect with his family and his childhood. And that's where this kind of was born. As a child, he worked on farms, not just for his family, but for other farmers nearby. He's 11, 12 years old, picking out roots from the ground, clearing the ground of rocks. He and his brother, they loved it because they got paid $1 an hour. That was one comic book an hour. That's how they were thinking of it. So it obviously had it fed that hobby of his, which eventually became his career, which was great. And he spins it out into not just a memoir of his childhood, because apparently that's what Blankets was. And he turns this into just about himself and his relationship to ginseng, and then also just about ginseng as a whole. And I never would have guessed that I would ever read like a 300, 400 page book just about ginseng. And I did. And the only way that it could be done was by packaging it in this beautifully illustrated graphic novel. This is really one of the most beautiful, impressive displays of art that I have seen. And the fact that he did it with his deformed hand, he still has the issue. It took him 4 years or however long to finish this series because he couldn't draw quickly anymore. But he didn't take any shortcuts. The art is so lush. There's so many just lines on the page. Every page is creatively constructed. It's not a lot. Sometimes it's straight panels, but sometimes it's pages that just images are just blending into each other, and it's full bleed to the edge of the page. he's not cutting any corners despite what's going on with his hand. And even the parts where I was kind of out of it a little bit, because honestly, like, how much ginseng can I really read about before I start to lose interest? Even when I was losing interest, the art was keeping me going because it was so just lovely to look at. I loved his decision to only use the color red and like the various shades of it. It was either black ink or red coloring, and that was it for the whole book. And it really paid off. It looks terrific. And I now know more about ginseng than I would have ever anticipated knowing about ginseng. And what's crazy is I don't think I've ever actually tasted ginseng. I don't know that I've ever had it in my life. So I know a lot about this root that I've had no experience with personally whatsoever. But as an agricultural study as well, he travels to China, he travels to Korea, and he interviews farmers from Wisconsin, from there, and he tells their story and he lets it unfold. And even though this has memoir aspects to it, it's almost biographical of those farmers as well. He gives the farmers the spotlight for the majority of this book. And they each have interesting stories. Some of them are really heartbreaking stories. One of the Wisconsin farmers, once he talks about how he became a ginseng farmer after his father. He grew up on the farm with him, working the fields, and it's all he knows and it's all he feels comfortable doing. He started his own family, and then COVID hit, and devastation struck, and personal tragedy. Like just those storylines of all of these individual farmers and just what they've gone through and how the industry has risen and fallen for them, the tough times, the good times. It's interesting. If you have any interest whatsoever in agriculture, American agriculture or abroad, I think you would find this an interesting read. But there's also things in here there's aspects of like Asian folklore, because he talks about the origins of Chinese medicine, because ginseng is a medicinal root. He talks about the origins of it as a medicinal root, and how it was initially farmed, the folklore of the god of agriculture and medicine, Shenang, I think his name was. And those pages are beautiful, because then he gets to draw like these fantastical elements. And it's so much variety. There's a lot of realism in here, but there's whimsy. It's just great. It's a visual feast. And there's so much to enjoy about it. I alluded to this earlier, there were times when my interest was flagging in it just because I'm not overly interested in agriculture. I don't know or really care about ginseng a whole lot. I think this was the best, most ingestible way to learn about these things for me personally. But I kind of struggled to form a bit of an emotional connection to this book. I didn't relate with Thompson's upbringing, nor his life after the fact. It's just, nothing against the book. It's my personal enjoyment and my personal interests. These topics are not something that I usually go for. And yet, I still was consistently entertained enough where I highly recommend this book. And I was very particularly entertained by it. Now, I will shift now to Muybridge by Guy Delisle. And this book, I did have an emotional connection to, and I loved it. I loved it completely. When I read Ginseng Roots and I finished it, I was like, okay, that's going to end up being the best book that I read this month, easily. And then I read this one right after it, and I was like, oops, this one's actually going to be the best book I read this month, probably. And the very simple reason is that I have a just personal interest in the history of photography and moving images in particular. I have a degree in moving image arts. That's what I chose to do with my education. And Muybridge is the life story of Edward Muybridge, who was a pioneer of moving image photography. Photography in general, but in particular, moving images. And I knew a little bit about his story already just from my college studies, but this covers more so his entire life, specifically once he takes up photography to his death. And learning all of that other information about him was incredibly fascinating. I never learned in college that Edward Muybridge, the father of the first moving image ever, shot and killed a man in cold blood, like on purpose. His wife's lover, he shot and killed, and was found not guilty due to justifiable homicide. And if he was found guilty, who knows how that would have changed the trajectory of the moving images of cinema in the world. Someone would have gotten around to it. This book talks about his encounters with other people working in the same field. He crosses paths with Thomas Edison at a certain point, who's very interested in the topic as well. But there's no denying Muybridge was the first. And this was a great, energetic telling of his life story. Guy Delisle, I think, did a great job of picking out all of the most interesting pieces of Muybridge's life and adding extra flavor to it where necessary. So there's only so much, I guess, you can get out of what he did with photography. So Delisle will fold in a couple pages once in a while on just like, what's Edison up to at this time? Or this other guy, Muybridge worked closely with Leland Stanford, the founder of Stanford University, a robber baron, one of the most wealthy men in the world at the time. He was actually the guy, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but what's Leland Stanford doing right now? So he's weaving in multiple different life stories at the same time, but it's all centering around what were they doing in relation to Muybridge. And as somebody who has that particular interest in film history and photography, this is, to me, a must-have book. I wasn't planning on purchasing this one. This is another library book, but I'm going to go out and probably buy it this weekend from my local comic shop. I have to have it. It's too important to me and just all of my interests. Like the foundation of my interest is built on the inventions of Edward Muybridge. And this is a great way to learn that information. It's not dry, moves very quickly. It's funny at times. And what I particularly love that Delisle did was he includes the actual photographs that Muybridge took throughout his life. Not all of them, obviously. He took, thousands. But the important ones, the major ones, there are high resolution scan copies in here. You could see what he's actually photographing. So we get the backstory of how the photographs came to be, and then we see the result. And it's a wonderful piece of history. I absolutely loved this book. I would recommend this one really to everybody. It's such an interesting piece of world history. I would give, let's do my arbitrary and subjective grades now. Arbitrary and subjective grade for Ginseng Roots by Craig Thompson. I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. It was missing out on that emotional connection for me, totally subjective. And Muybridge by Guy Delisle, this one is going to end up a 10 out of 10 for me. Do with that what you will. I think both of these books are likely to end up on my top graphic novels of the year at the end of the year. So I really can't recommend them enough. Let me know if you've read either or both of these books and your thoughts on them in the comments below. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.